In my previous video, I talked about these dollar store locks, and they're warded locks, and I made a skeleton key from them just by drummeling off these things from a key. If you look like a normal key looks like that, you just remove these things and you have these things at the end. Just that one little bit that turns the activator at the very bottom of the lock. It's warded, so that's the only protection the lock has, and it opens. I wasn't super happy with these locks. I found that they didn't quite, sometimes they'd be very difficult to lock, sometimes they wouldn't lock. And so I decided to pick up some master locks, and these are also warded master locks, just slightly smaller than those dollar store ones. And I got them for a good deal by buying them in bulk, as you can see. And one of the first things I noticed is that the keys look the same, but they fit in to some locks really easily, but other locks you can't actually get the key in. If you look at these keys, you'll see that this one is flat, like it's just totally flat on this side. And then you've got the key line ridges right here on this one, and it's off-centered. If you look at this one, it's pretty much exactly the same key, but it has the ridges on this side and flat on the other side. So this one's flat on this side and this one's flat on this side. And then some of the other keys have double ridges. So this one has a ridge on this side and a ridge, a protrusion up here. So it doesn't have a flat side. And that's just sort of this disc, this disc right here that spins. That just prevents the wrong type of key from getting in there. So it's an extra layer of protection which these locks have, which is pretty interesting. So one of the first things I tried, because these locks here are pretty much exactly the same, these keys here. So this is the key for the dollar store that I made, the skeleton key. You'll see that it will turn, but it doesn't unlock the locks. And there is one here that it does unlock. I don't remember which one. But you can, if you listen carefully, you can also hear while I'm doing this that there does seem to be a spring that is this one does work. And I think this lock is actually broken inside, which is the reason why it's locking. I'm working on this one. But I thought there might be something a little strange about this key versus this key. So my next step to do this was to create a new skeleton key, exactly the same manner as the other one. I just shaved off these edges and left the tip on. And obviously this key won't fit in all the locks, but some of them it does. And it turns, but it doesn't unlock them. And I tried to investigate a little bit more. If I can find the key for this. What I did is I looked inside, and I can see a small, when you turn the key, the back part of the key, this part of the key right here, as it goes in and it turns, I can see it pushing up a little piece of metal that's obviously going into the locking mechanism, because if there's the little locking bar here that connects into this part. And if I wiggle this around while looking through the keyhole, it's very difficult to see, but I can see that moving. And when I stuck the skeleton key into a lock where that it will actually fit into, sorry. This is the one that opens, but in general, you can still see, if you look in there in the hole, you can see it does activate that. And I was sure that it would go all the way in. And even if I turn it, this lock is the one that's broken. It came like that. I hadn't modified that one, but if I were to open this one, again, if I turn this, you can, when I turn this, you can see the little locking moves. And if I turn this, and you still hear that click, and you shouldn't be hearing that click. And when I do this, it should be unlocking the lock. And to me, that means that there probably are two locking mechanisms on this, one on each side of this. So if we look at the lock, there'll be another one of these on the inside of this. So there'll be two locking mechanisms. Both need to be activated, one going in this direction and the one going in this direction. And the bottom of the key, the bottom back of the key is the part that moves that little lever. And then that releases this lock. So I didn't really know what was going on inside the lock. So what I did is I actually pounded out that brass disc on this, and then I will just open this one here. And what I noticed, and you will not be able to see this, but if you look deeply in here, you'll see when I click the lock closed, you'll see two things. There'll be one at the very base, which is what this key is opening, that moves. That's really obvious movement. It's really big. But inside this, deep inside at the top, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but you'll see just a tiny little more. It looks like just the ward moving. And so there's a second lock that's activated, but it is not at the base of the lock. It's a little bit up. So I was going to try and figure out how to measure that and recut a key that would account for that. But what I ended up doing was just comparing all the keys, because obviously I assume that all the locks, the internals of the locks are all the same. And the only difference between them is the wardings on the lock. And that's just these layers in the lock. So I just looked for commonalities between all the keys. So I put the key over top of each other. You can see this key is pretty much exactly the same as the other key. But this is flat on this side and this isn't flat on this side. That's so that the keyway is protecting this one. But if you look at another key in here, you can just see it, but I put these a little bit off to the side, but you can see that there's a little bit of an overlap here between the two keys. And that means that's the blade that's the part that's activating that, because it's common. I looked at, there's 4 different keys here, and so I looked at all 4 different keys, and that was the little piece that was in both of them. So what I actually did is I just recut a key with a second blade in it. So if we look at this relative to this, you can see it's the very front of this blade. It's overlapping with this part of the blade. And if we look at this key here, it's overlapping with the back of this blade. So this is the common point in both of them. So in any lock where this will actually enter, it will unlock it. Unfortunately, it wouldn't fit in most of these locks because of the warding on this little spinny piece, this brass colored piece. So what I did is I just ground down the edges on this key so it was a little bit thinner so it would fit in all the locks. So now this key actually does open every single one of these locks. All 8 of them, even though there are 4 different keys in it. And it's not perfect on some of them. It is a little bit hard to activate them, but it does work. It's you know, anybody could figure out how to do this with given a key. But it does work on all of them now. So just to sort of summarize what happened there is, and how I did this was I put all the keys. I knew the bottom bit, this little bit right here, was important. It's actually the back of the key that's the important part, just by looking inside it. And then I knew there was another piece that was important higher than that, just by looking at as the lock closed. If you look in the keyhole of this, while the lock closed, I could just barely see something moving in there. And then I just found, instead of trying to measure it, I just found all the commonalities in the keys where there was a common piece that was always a common blade, a common location of the blade in all the keyways, and I just left that out. And then I ground it down on the top and the back surface so that it would get rid of those grooves, those key grooves. and it would be thin enough to fit it through all the wardings and locks, and now it opens all of them. So this is the shape of the key required for that, and you can tell just by looking at the keys. Thank you.